Are you blind, Amanda? This is nasty. The janitorial managers yelled violently towards Jordan, the new black Jordan. The janitor looked at the immaculate. I just cleaned the glass, he said, without hesitation. She grabbed a full cup of tossed the coffee across the table. The glass splashed with a dark liquid. Amanda crossed, soaking onto the floor. Her arms are now clean as she looks down at Jordan. Once more, as we explore the narrative, if you think everyone ought to be treated with dignity, regardless of their identity, or click the subscribe button to see what color they are. Click now and let us know where you are. Observing leaving Kingsley, it was an early morning, is a multi-million-dollar doll business. Renowned for its real estate success, high-end business and investments operations, the office building was located height in the skyline of the city, crowded with workers in sharp suits with pricey briefcases, consuming expensive coffee and collaborating with, and the air of significance of a lone motorcycle pulling up its engine in front of the glass doors. Slicing through the glossy fragments of the business, Jordan Carter got off his motorcycle, wearing a basic hoodie and dark pants, and a dilapidated knapsack slum situated above one shoulder to the world as he seemed nothing noteworthy. But what no one was aware of was that he wasn't only a chance guest, he was the eldest child, born to the legitimate billionaire owner of the corporation, the empire's heir and incoming CEO. However, he wasn't entering today as he entered as a nobody for years, boss. Jordan had been living overseas, expanding his understanding and developing into the man who would have been his late black mother, proud of Robert Kingsley. His father, a white man, got married again, and the business had carried on under his leadership, but Jordan had heard rumors, reports of discrimination, allegations, whispers that unfair promotions, minorities received second class treatment. Class members in the empire of his father, and he was present to witness it today with his own eyes. As he moved in the direction of the entering and rearranging his backpack, he sensed the staff gaze on him right away. Wearing high-end clothes, gazed at him with uncertainty between the two receptions nicely attired in business wear, looked at each other, and suddenly he appeared. Matthews. Kevin was among the senior operational managers. He had a slicked back and was tall and stocky, hair and a mindset that are both self-importance, which he took great satisfaction in maintaining high standards for the business, which to him meant making sure that people only belonged if they fit the vision, and did not suit that description for Kevin Jordan. Picture of Jordan arriving at the glass doors. Kevin gave it a long, scornful glance. Afterward, a grin began to appear on his lips. He moved forward and said, "Hey, Ruman." Jordan hesitated as deliveries went to the back. It was the first indication that he gradually turned to face Kevin's arrogant look and wait for the words to settle before telling me, "Have you ever entered a location and before you had a chance to introduce yourself, people already thought you weren't a part of it? Leave a comment if you have ever encountered and subscribe to something similar to this. Watch this video to see more tales similar." Jordan may have said anything about this. He could have disclosed who he was at that moment. But not just yet. Rather, he grinned. Actually, he said with a slow, knowing smile, idly fiddling with his knapsack, "I'm not. I was wondering if you were here for a delivery. Any employment vacancies here that I'm in? Severe need for employment." Sir Kevin brought up, and Jordan's eyebrows are raised and lowered as if he was a substance that was adhered to the bottom of his pricey shoes. The other staff members laughed a little, even muttered to one another as though the notion of this black dude in casual attire, while employed at Kingsley Enterprises, some kind of funny. Kevin did a job at folding his arms. "You want to work here, Jordan?" Snorted, nodded, while maintaining a neutral expression. "Yes, I am searching for a chance." Kevin laughed mockingly, and he turned and added, "Don't think we're hiring," dismissively walking away. already presuming the discussion ended, but Jordan didn't. Are you certain that he pressed I'll take? Everything or any position that is open right now, Kevin had finished amusing him at that moment. He sighed exaggeratedly and gestured, "Hey, check," toward a nearby receptionist. The system checks to see if anything appropriate for him. The receptionist's smile was scarcely concealed. Entered data into her computer. After a couple of. She looked up for a second and smiled broadly. "One position is open," she stated, looking at Kevin, who returned the sneer. Indeed, what did the receptionist say? A little patronizing laugh. The, the janitorial staff is temporarily hiring. Silent amusement permeated the atmosphere. Kevin smirked as he turned back to Jordan. "Expanding, so what do you claim to have desired?" Jordan had an opportunity, so he tipped his head a little, as though he may sense the gravity of the situation. He could feel their silent chuckles and gazes, their belief that he was in need, and he made his decision then. He nodded calmly and grinned. "I'll take it." When Jordan repeated it, Kevin blinked. "I'll take it if he makes himself louder this time." Kevin erupted in laughter the other day. Workers who were observing also shook their heads, were chuckling that this man really took a work as a janitor. But Jordan? He simply grinned since he didn't flinch. They were unaware of their recent actions. They recently presented the next CEO of a front row seat for Kingsley Enterprises to observe the depth of their discrimination, but they were unsure of who they were conversing, and before long they were going to learn, because things are going to get really. It's intriguing that you would assume that after finding a job would be the first step. Improving, but for Jordan Carter, the actual test was just first. Picture entering a location where everyone thinks you're inferior. They envision themselves working in a setting where each word, each look, and each breath serves as a reminder of undesirable. Have you ever worked in a position where you were treated harshly by someone just due to your identity? Please leave a comment if have you ever been in that predicament due to the subsequent events in this narrative. Yes, this type of injustice will cause you to feel angry, and if you're already subscribed, to smash and click the like button, since you won't believe what took place. Jordan Carter was the second person to arrive. The Kingsley Enterprises hidden heir, wearing the outfit of a janitor and holding a bucket and mop that he had been using for in less than an hour. Everything became evident. The flooring of this place did not welcome him. The structure shone beneath pricey chandeliers that have been polished over the years by employees who had passed through these hallways before him. Yet not a single one of them has previously served as the CEO in disguise. But nobody inside the building noticed him as more than a housekeeper. And nobody was more explicit about that than his new Amanda Whitmore was the supervisor. Tall, blonde, and always frowning. She had Amanda's art etched on her face. For years at Kingsley Enterprises, and she was overly arrogant about her status, as she believed she had control over the employees under her and Jordan. From the beginning, she made it apparent that she felt that he should be at the bottom of it. Began right away with Amanda's crisp. Jordan's words reverberated throughout the corridor. With a mop in hand, I turned to watch her march. Glaring in his direction, "What do you believe you're doing?" She yelled at Jordan, looked at the M below, then looked back up at Don't Get Her Mopping. "Amanda Stead, I don't like your kind, clever with me. Believing that you can act arrogantly, Jordan, you're nice around here." Grinned in order to gauge how profound, how disrespectful this woman was. Ran deeply with Amanda, not just disliking Jordan, whom she detested, did him, and she demonstrated it whenever she had the chance. If the corridor wasn't sufficiently mopped, it was tricky if he cleaned a desk. If he cleared out a garbage can, he was also sluggish. Amanda, it didn't matter what he did. Discovered a grievance to voice, and not only did she correct him, but she loudly degraded him in front of. She snarled, "Are you all stupid?" Jordan was cleaning in the afternoon. Jordan's executive lounge is as serene as ever. Put his rag down. Did I do something wrong? Incorrect. Amanda rolled her eyes, drastically shifting to a small number of workers. Did you see someone nearby who was already staring? Do something incorrect, she teasingly said. Oh, I'm giggling. Perhaps it's the fact that you remain in this position after sweeping as if you were a. The staff laughed at the 5-year-old. Beneath, Jordan inhaled their breath, taking in each and every face. He didn't flinch or react. Because they were making fun of him at the time. They would soon repent every moment of it, and right when he had the idea not wanting things to grow worse, Kevin went inside the S. That's Kevin Matthews, in the same racist boss who had made fun of him. Kevin's first day, when he still didn't notion that the individual he disparaged was about, Kevin walked to take control of his entire future. Into the corridor where Jordan was. He scrubbed the floors thoroughly on his knees. Jordan didn't need to turn, all right. All around to sense Kevin's sneer. Kevin sneered and crossed his eyes at you. I suppose we've found the ideal location. Jordan let out a leisurely exhale. Not, he wouldn't expose himself just yet. However, things were about to improve significantly. Kevin set out on a personal quest to continue to make Jordan's life as difficult as possible, throwing rubbish on the hallway's floor immediately following Jordan's cleaning, intentionally spilled coffee and made a demand. Jordan called him boy and told him to clean it up whenever he had the chance, and worst of all, he completed everything in front of others. Some of the workers chuckled, while others, they remained quiet, and some closely observed Jordan because they noticed something about him, but didn't. His posture is overly assured. Presence that is too composed and in control, and his manner of looking at people, he appeared to be scrutinizing them. However, the mistreatment persisted until one Amanda, that ruthless boss, took Jordan had just done. But it was too far. The executive conference room needs to be cleaned. What was she doing when Amanda barged in? Snapped, indicating the immaculate. Jordan blinked, indicating the table. Amanda let out a loud sneer. This is filthy. You, Jordan, who was blind, looked at the polished, I just washed the glass. Amanda's mouth twisted into a sneer, then without hesitation missed a spot. Taking a full cup of coffee, she tossed it across the black table. The glass was splashed with liquid. Amanda crossed, soaking onto the floor. Her arm is looking down at Jordan. Please wipe it. Once more the room fell silent. Everybody who was passing by froze. Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. Jordan grinned as he took a slow breath. The real show is going to start now. Because Kevin and Amanda are unaware of is that everything in their life is going to Jordan Carter had been playing when things fell apart. He had been ridiculed for the long game, degraded and treated like filth. They believed that he was merely a janitor, believed he was inferior to them, but what they were unaware that he was around to take over as their new manager. And when his Robert Kingsley, the strong father, the company's white CEO, Finn, came. Every presumption, every assessment, there was a hint of conceit in that building. Was on the point of breaking. The phone of the receptionist rang loudly, cutting through the office's cacophony. She spoke rapidly in response, professional up until her expression shifted from a shock to a panicked expression. Since the individual on the other end was Robert Kingsley, the proprietor of the individual whose name appeared on each and every document in our business, and he was currently on his way, dispersed throughout the structure like executives in the firefighting industry corrected their secretaries of ties, hurried to arrange. Employees whispered enthusiastically about paperwork. No one was there when the big boss arrived. Nobody was more enthusiastic. Compared to Kevin Matthews, as he felt an opportunity had presented itself to Kevin. This was his opportunity to win the boss over. Oh, he could already see the hands trembling, with Robert Kingsley discussing expansion of the business or perhaps obtaining a promotion, but Kevin, the janitor, didn't ever give Jordan any thought now. Jordan just played a supporting role. In his idyllic little business world, however, he was going to get a lesson that wouldn't soon forget. And then the room collapsed as the elevator doors dinged. Robert Kingsley had arrived silently, tall, strong, and wearing a sleek gray suit emerged, his face piercing with authority that his mere presence commanded respect for him, and his helpers, senior executives and bodyguards walked with accuracy, and as he advanced, each and everyone in the room stood a Kevin, a little more upright, blew out the racist supervisor Amanda's chest. She already had her blouse adjusted and was envisioning herself being friendly with the supervisor employee muttered. This was the man they all looked forward to. Waited for Robert, strolled over to the middle of the floor, progressively rotated and grinned before uttering the words that changed everything, gentlemen and women. Robert spoke in a fluent, but today is an extremely special day for powerful people. People in this company held their breath. Kevin leaned forward a little in anticipation. Amanda put her hands together and closed her eyes. Robert went on, beaming with enthusiasm. I've been building Kingsley for years. Businesses that intend to depart left a legacy, a business that endures for excellence, achievement, and the majority of crucially. He stopped and looked around. Integrity. A few people changed the room clumsily at that phrase. Then Robert smiled once more. And I'm glad to say that today declare that my son, my firstborn, is formally present in the building's quiet. A surge of perplexity passed through the room. Folks looked at the firstborn son, Kevin, the new CEO, and his kid. His heart began to race since he had never before seen Robert's son and no one else had. The whispers began waiting to see if anyone had seen his son. Believed that his younger son was a descendant of Kevin was thinking about his second wife, racing if the next CEO was Robert's son, indicating that he had been present at work already, but his gaze flitted about the space and then it clicked off in his thoughts. Naturally, the only reason for this had to be among the perhaps one of the young white executives in Visiloksaki, men standing silently in fitted clothes, perhaps the well-dressed man in the back. Kevin, from the finance division, smirking, this wealthy white person was ideal. That was just how the new CEO, a male, Amanda should be standing next to. He nodded slightly in accord. They didn't need to worry about anything. However, Robert spoke once more. And this, when I said those words, the whole room trembled. Robert remarked triumphantly, "My son is already here." When Jordan arrived, time seemed to stop at every moment. One set of eyes turned in quest of Kevin glanced at Amanda's, assured her lips froze into a smirk upon seeing he was motionless in his janitor uniform, keeping his mop motionless. Standing exactly where he was left, Jordan complete and total quiet, and then Amanda's face was devoid of color. Her hand flew to her as she gasped suddenly. Employees muttered in shock in the chest, due to the fact that they disregarded the man. The man they had treated had been made fun of. Their new CEO like trash. Was it Kevin realized at that moment that he had just made the most significant error of his life to date in our office before each and every Kevin Matthews, an employee, assistant, and Amanda Whitmore was going to confront as a result of their activities, they had made fun of Jordan Carter for days, mocking him and acting as though he was not quite human, but never in their wildest moments did they dream that the one who held their humiliated future within his grasp. But now that the truth was directly in front of them, for a brief moment, no one breathed or moved for a moment. The office's air was so heavy with hearts could almost be heard in the stress. Kevin is racing while standing close to the middle of the entire room, gazed at Jordan's mouth. opened a little, but nothing came out. Amanda was standing a short distance away. Her face had disappeared, and she felt her stomach drop. Her eyes were pale and wide with shock. It couldn't, since it didn't make sense. Jordan, the janitor, doesn't get that. Couldn't have spent the previous mocking this man for a few days, forced him to clean up their spilled messes. Merely to force him to sweep them up. Amanda even threw coffee across the room, the table, and forced him to immediately wipe it in front of everyone. And they were now being informed that the same individual was the Kingsley's CEO. Businesses realized it had to be a joke. It wasn't Jordan, but it was a terrible, twisted joke. Stepped forward with impeccable stance. His eyes were peaceful, but his face was keenly concentrated. Because he was, after finishing his games, he surveyed the room as his whispers burst forth like, "Is this wildfire really happening?" He was a janitor before becoming the new CEO. Jordan's eyes moved over each one the entire time, and each of them, as though in silence, learning their faces by heart. And then, eventually, I assume that you all have a lot of Gordon's silky voice answered the queries. Stable and brimming with authority, Kevin, the room was very quiet. Remaining motionless, blinked quickly. His thoughts were racing for something. What can I say about Amanda? She looked like she desired to vanish, so Jordan allowed they. For a few moments, there is silence. Seconds before turning to face his dad. Stood next to him, his hands quietly observing behind his back. Jordan gave a small nod of approval. Dad gave a nod in return. And the room instantly became the property of Jordan Carter Kingsley is my name. His voice reverberated throughout the office, like a wave that commands everyone's attention. Note that I am the eldest son of Robert Kingsley, and I am currently your new CEO, appears out of nowhere. Since the truth had been expressed, nobody was able to prevent him. Amanda led Kevin's entire body to become rigid. Employees exchanged a choked gasp. Astonished looks from someone in the rear, let whistling softly as though they were unable to accept the information they had just heard in Jordan. Jordan was unfazed and stood tall, unperturbed, and untouchable, due to the first time since going through those doors, and everyone saw him for who he was, actually Ben Jordan for the last few days. Kept moving gently around the room. I've been employed at this facility the janitor's amazement and bewilderment went. All I wanted to observe how the atmosphere. People are treated by this business, my business. When they believe that nobody is observing, his gaze falls straight on. Kevin gulped, and I noticed Jordan. Continued, his voice becoming a little lower. Was not just disheartening, but Kevin is horrible. Kevin Matthews flinched as he breathed. Jordan accelerated and stepped in his direction. You made fun of me because you thought I was a nobody. You did it while laughing in my face. So confidently, since you believed that Kevin's untouchable hand began to shake. He attempted to talk in an attempt to save what he had little remaining pride. But before would Jordan be able to lift Kevin's hand? Jordan's head rotated when it snapped shut. When examined, Amanda's face was. Her gaze flashed over the bright red room, looking for a way out, for a lifeline, for anything. But she couldn't find anything. Jordan responded, tilting his head. Amanda took a deep breath, and you flung coffee across the table, forcing me to. She clamped her eyes shut and cleaned it. Jordan let his words to sink in, then he said, one final time, let me ask you a question about the room's breath. If you were aware of my origins, would you have handled me from the beginning? Alternatively, a prolonged period of agonizing quiet, followed by Amanda's gradual nod. Jordan grinned, since now, for a moment, he held the power. Moment for a single, excruciating moment. Kevin hoped that perhaps this was every dream turns into a nightmare because of this. This couldn't possibly be real. Occurring, he had been Disparaging Jordan Carter is treating him indifferently, and now in front of him, donning they had made fun of him in the same janitor uniform. There was a man who could put an end to his whole career. Jordan turned with a single word. His gaze settled on the room gently. On each employee's memorization, several of them had stood by their faces and observed that some of them had chuckled, although a couple of them had demonstrated generosity, and that wouldn't be forgotten because Jordan had been observing everything until his eyes met onto Kevin, and after what felt like Jordan, talked to Kevin for what seemed like an eternity. Matthew's remarks pierced. The Kevin flinched his head in silence like a razor. His hands were clasped at his sides. The whole fear made his body tense because he knew, even though he knew what was going to happen, he still... Sir Kevin stammered, so he had to try. Attempting to make him grin shakily, I was unaware that Jordan had raised the Kevin's jaw slammed shut with a single hand. Because, the power thing, when you're at your lowest, and Kevin has simply Jordan took one step and lost everything. Let me ask you a question, Kevin. His voice was smooth, calm, and deadly. Jordan tilted his head, and Kevin swallowed hard. Head a little if you had recognized me. Would you have treated me? He added. Kevin froze his mouth the way you did, closed and reopened, yet he had no response, as they were both aware of the reality. Kevin's head fell, and his voice was, I didn't know, barely above a whisper. Jordan grinned and answered, I know, simply. That was the whole purpose. As Kevin hadn't been unkind since he hadn't been impolite on a bad day. Due of his worry, Kevin didn't disparage Jordan because he believed he was something that was beneath him. Jordan would never forget or pardon. Jordan's gaze shifted to Amanda had been standing motionless, hands clutching her dress's ear as if it were the only thing being kept preventing her from passing out. And now those fearful gaze were fixed on his. Amanda attempted a grin. Sir, but I was just... She shouted out in accordance with corporate policy. Jordan arched an eyebrow at the company's policy. Amanda gave a brief frantic nod. I was simply Jordan cutting her off, sir. Splattering coffee over Amanda's table. She opened her face, which was eerily pale. Mouth nothing emerged as there wasn't Jordan. Please take a moment to relax and allow They are then crushed by the weight of their deeds. He turned to Robert Kingsley, his father. Had been observing this whole event. Develop without a single. His facial expression was unintelligible, and first time in his professional life, Robert Kingsley felt embarrassed by what his business was embarrassed of. The staff members he had trusted were embarrassed. That the way his own son was treated was this by the individuals who were meant to represent his company, and he currently was ready to make amends. Robert moved forward, then glanced at Kevin, at Jordan, then at Amanda, and at last Jordan Robert sighed, saying softly, What do you do? You believe it ought to be done, Kevin. Clearly Amanda shivered and gripped her hands, softly begging together, and Jordan fired them without hesitation. Robert. Kevin Matthews nodded, and his voice remained composed, yet terminate your job. In this, the business gets shut down right away. Kevin's knees almost gave out, but he choked, Sir, and I ignored you, Robert. He looked at him, and then at Amanda Whitmore. Your supervisory role has been terminated. Amanda, you are no longer employed here. She whirled around and let out a silent scream. Jordan's big, desperate eyes, sir. I didn't mean to imply that. Jordan held up. Amanda's words died in her throat, and it was finished in an instant. Amanda and Kevin have been together for days, degrading a guy, and now they were the ones. Jordan is the only thing remaining. Wasn't done. He looked at the workers and then he grinned, but not all of. He responded, You remained silent, and with that, as soon as one worker went forward, it was Linda, the only one who had remained, stood up for Jordan when no one else was willing, to Jordan was going to reward her now, decided to consult his father first. He stated that Linda should be promoted as CEO. Efficient right away gasps shock. Tears filled Linda's eyes, and she simply, as though the equilibrium had been restored, for Jordan Carter had observed for days the manner in which they handled him, observed how, as they undressed, they watched and giggled. Him of honor, thinking he had nothing to. First of all, the truth has been disclosed that Kevin Matthews had left. Amanda Whitmore was humiliated, and the others workers, they were going to hear their life's most significant words, as this was more than simply a single man's. The goal of this victory was to alter a system that permitted prejudice to persist in. First of all, the room was silent, was making the same staff members who had once, someone who had whispered behind them, laughed. Jordan was being treated like he was unseen. They were now unable to even look him in the Jordan's eye. Remained motionless in his. The janitor's uniform remains the same, silently strong presence. But now there. Nobody was left to question his identity. While he served as their leader today, Jordan moved forward one step, then another. The moment's weight fell on the room as he meticulously examined each and every face. And at last he said, "Respect one." Word, yet it sliced through the atmosphere as he left it there for a while. A thundering, he let them sense it before continuing. It is not appropriate to show respect, for it is not exclusive to a small group of people. Something which ought to be determined by race, by class, based on an individual's behavior, attire, or the manner in which they, speaking with respect, ought to be the cornerstone of all that we do, since without it, we turn into exactly what we saw. A few workers bowed their heads this week. Heads, the guilt was beginning to seep in. I have been invisible, as I have wandered these halls. I have been disregarded and denigrated by you. Offended, he looked at the table Amanda had at the conference room. I've been compelled to throw coffee over, to tidy up the mess that was made merely to make fun of. His words' weight settled on me, like he could feel the bricks on their shoulders. However, he wasn't finished yet. Throughout it all, I've discovered one thing. Every breath in the room was held during the silence. The individuals who bring others down do. Jordan nodded because they are terrified, fearful of equality and change, fearful of a world without power, decided by integrity rather than privilege. Electricity crackled in the air. Since he was correct and all of that room was aware that today is your last day, could have a heart attack due to these weren't merely statements. This was a commitment. Jordan looked to the man who was his father, had started this business from the beginning, raising the man who had relied on others to flee it, as well as the man who had recently discovered that some of those individuals had been in charge of it. Nodding into the dirt, Robert Kingsley, he wasn't only staring at his son once, he was examining the future with immediate effect. Jordan declared that this business will be putting new regulations into place to guarantee that there is no place for bigotry in our. A few employees screamed in horror at the offices, but none of them objected to it, since what could they truly say, Jordan? There will be accountability if it continues. The repercussions will be severe. Change. Then he took a step that nobody. He grinned as anticipated, because this has nothing to do with retaliation, about causing suffering to others. It was about constructing something superior. The foundation of this business will no longer remain haughtiness. It will be founded on respect for fairness, based on the idea that everyone rises when we encourage one another. And simply like that, the whole business changed, because they weren't only looking at as their CEO. Jordan was viewed as, for the first time, their leader. And they realized that this business was at last in the Jordan returned to his right hands. Robert Kingsley, his father, inhaled with pride. His chest rose, and he did anything he hadn't done previously, moved forward to give his son a handshake. a public acknowledgement or declaration, an implicit reality that this business belonged to Jordan Carter, and it was now necessary to rewriting history, is how you transform. The globe, without retaliation, without rage, but with actual force, the kind of it does more than merely disrupt systems. Creates something better, in your opinion? Jordan made the appropriate choice if he have been more considerate, or did he manage it? Flawlessly, put your ideas in the comments, and if you think this story is fantastic, click the like or subscribe buttons. Switch on alerts. See you in the upcoming video.